Suicide of a superpower, that's the focus of tonight's angle. Oh, it was more of the new normal in Biden's America today.
Israel bombs! USA praise! How many kids did you kill today? Israel bombs! Free Palestine!
And it was more peace and love for the pro-Iran coalition in Chicago on Saturday.
I'm going to teach you a chant in Persian that you can use if you ever encounter those Zionist freaks. You're going to say, Marg Bar. Marg Bar Israel. Marg Bar Israel. It can mean left to or down with. So we can get a Marg Bar America. Yes, we can. Marg Bar America. Marg Bar America.
Death to Israel, death to America. Now, these are the voters, by the way, that Joe Biden was desperately trying to court over the weekend by telling Israel to bring down the temperature after the attempted drone attack on Sunday morning by Iran. Now, it's been a muddled mess and an embarrassment to the United States.
What is your message to Iran in this moment?
Don't. The U.S. confirming that Iran has fired a barrage of drones and missiles toward Israel, a significant escalation in the Middle East.
Has President Biden considered maybe beefing up the public Iran posture to be more than just one word?
You're referring to don't.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about...
And they did it anyway.
And let's talk about where we...
Now, let's pause for a moment and realize, first off, that this isn't 1994, it's not 2004. America, sadly, is not the force she once was. Now, how can we be? We welcome people into our country who stand deeply opposed to our traditions, our Judeo-Christian beliefs, and who can blame them? Look, after all, remember what our top leaders say about America.
America has a long history of systemic racism.
Addressing profound inequities, including systemic racism.
We're going to rip out the systemic racism that still infects our laws, our institutions, our culture.
Now, these aren't the words of a superpower, because a superpower is proud and resolute. America under Biden is ashamed and shaky. Now, way back in 2011, Pat Buchanan predicted all of this in his bestseller, Suicide of a Superpower. Will America survive to 2025?
The West is disintegrating. It's the greatest civilization the world has ever produced, and I think it is dying. In 1905, Western empires controlled the entire world, with the addition of Japan and Asia, 6 or 7 countries, America included, controlled the entire world. We went through 2 world wars that carried off something like 100 million people, all these Western nations. They all lost their empires. Almost all have lost their armies and navies. They have lost their basic fundamental Christian faith. Their culture has begun to disintegrate, and the people have begun to die.
Now we see that Buchanan really was right, as usual. Today, the same people who got us into this mess are now somehow stunned that Americans are opposed to more foreign intervention, more money for Ukraine. And those same people think that America is weaker and our enemies are stronger because the American people are the problem. And the representatives in the House lack the will to stand up to our enemies. And these same people think that if we just agreed to borrow more money, if we agreed to take on more commitments to other countries, if we agreed to trust Biden and his team even more, then things would be better. Well, they are completely wrong. The American people are still loyal, they're still patriotic, they're still committed to building a richer and safer world for everyone. Most still support Israel, they still mistrust Vladimir Putin, they still want America to be number one. The problem isn't the American people. The problem is what our leaders have done to the American people and America. Measured on the basis of purchasing power parity, China's economy is now larger than ours. The United States is over $34 trillion in debt and counting. The United States intel community lacks credibility. And young people, they're not interested in joining the military anymore. Government geniuses gave in to globalization and gutted our jobs. Look, the United States is hated around the world. That wasn't an accident. It resulted in part from the constant drumbeat of anti-American propaganda put out by Hollywood and our own government. By the way, both constantly tell the world that America is irredeemably greedy, polluting everything, racist, evil. Who can forget Obama's apology tour? Now, these conditions mean that the United States doesn't have the type of leverage that we once did in world affairs. And of course, Biden, he's just made everything worse. He's simply not credible as a global leader. We have become, sadly, under Biden, a laughingstock. Can you ever imagine him putting him on the phone with other world leaders? Imagine listening to those calls. They know he's not serious, and therefore they think that we are not serious. After all, we elected him. It's not surprising that evil countries everywhere are on the march. And it's certainly not surprising that Washington seems helpless to stop them. But the answer here isn't to criticize House Republicans or write more op-eds calling on Americans to make sacrifices for Ukraine. Let me be clear. Americans will not support a government that they do not trust, and they're not willing to support throwing away resources on policies that are doomed to fail. That was true when we left Vietnam. It was true when we left Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's true now. Look at the chaos that has been sown around the world in Biden's first term. And then imagine how much worse it will be after 4 more years of Biden's decline. And that's the angle.